National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program's virtual public meeting. Before we start, I want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded and we'll post the recording and presentation materials to our program website in a couple of days. So my name is Tassine Malik, and I will be talking about the NEVI program for DDOT, and today we'll be going over the program background, eligible location, requirements, site preferences, our partnership facilitation tool, the letters of support required from the property owner and PEPCO for the application package, and stakeholder engagement, the program timeline, and have a Q&A session at the end. So the NEVI program is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the district is receiving $16.7 million over 5 years. And this is the first funding round for multiple funding rounds. And the purpose of this program will be to accelerate the adoption of EVs and create a reliable network of charging stations to reduce range anxiety for drivers and meet the district climate goals by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So these charging stations will need to be located along federally designated alternative fuel corridors. And there are currently 5 AFCs in the district, and there will be a phased approach to fully build out these corridors. And so the first phase is corridor pending, meaning there are no no NEVI compliant charging stations along those corridors every 50 miles, according to the guidelines. And corridor ready means there are some charging stations every 50 miles, but there are gaps in the district between neighboring states in those corridors. And so DDOT has developed this site mapping tool showing eligible locations, and the charging stations will need to be located within 1 travel mile of an exit point from these AFCs. And so this purple polygon shows those eligible locations, and the link to the site mapping tool can be found following the link on the screen. And we suggest that applicants reach out to DDOT to confirm site eligibility, especially if your proposed site is along the edge of the purple polygon, to ensure that the 1 travel mile requirement is being met, or else your application package will be considered ineligible. So now we'll be talking about the minimum site requirements for the charging stations. And so each charging station will need to have a minimum of 4 charging ports, and all 4 need to be capable of charging a combined charging system compliant electric vehicle. And more specifics to the federal requirements are there needs to be at least 1 type 1 CCS connector, and the other connectors can be NACS or other types of connectors according to the guidelines, but they still need to be able to charge a CCS compliant vehicle. Information has to be publicly available 24/7, and there cannot be a paywall or any kind of barrier to enter the parking facility. And each charging port must have an annual uptime greater than 97% and needs to provide a contactless payment method that accepts major credit and debit cards. To the right is a photo of a NEVI compliant station that was installed by Ohio in December 2023 to provide an example of what a typical NEVI compliant station looks like. Other parking requirements and preferences are there needs to be a minimum of 4 parking spaces to simultaneously charge for EVs. And additional points will be given to applicants if there are 88 accessible parking spaces and if it is designed for pull-through vehicle access. There's more information on design recommendations for accessible parking on the US Access Board website, the link on the screen. And to the right is an example of what a ADA accessible parking space looks like according to the US Access Board. Additional site preferences and points that will be given during application evaluation is if there are presence of restrooms, food options, and other types of amenities within walking distance. So think restaurants, grocery stores, libraries, gyms, any sort of amenities people can go to while their vehicle is being charged, because DC fast charger takes about 20 to 30 minutes to charge a EV. And if the associated amenities are open within typical business hours or 24/7, but the parking facility needs to be open 24/7, and the charging station has to be open 24/7. And if there are presence of safety and security features beyond lighting, and if the location is within a Justice 40 community. There's a link on the screen on this PowerPoint to the Justice 40 map, and the site mapping tool that DDOT provides has a layer showing an overlap of the purple region that I showed earlier with the Justice 40 locations. And if the applicant is able to provide evidence of community support, to the right is a picture of that same charging station in Ohio that's at a pilot travel center that's within walking distance of restaurants like an Arby's and a Cinnabon and a grocery store, um, with those types of amenities that we're looking for here as well. Uh, So in response to feedback at the previous public meeting to connect potential site hosts to potential applicants, we created a partnership facilitation tool. So the first link on the screen is a form to fill out your contact information about your organization, your proposed site location, why you are interested in the NEVI grant program, and and to fill out this form by May 3rd. And the results of that form are on the second link for potential applicants and site hosts to connect with each other for the RFA. And Meredith has been dropping links for all the links on the screen that I've been sharing for you in the chat. One of the key requirements of the application package will be the property owner letter of support. So the applicant has to provide a letter of support from the property owner establishing permission to install, operate, and maintain the EV charger for the duration of the grant agreement. And the property owner and applicant can enter into a separate agreement that details specific terms of that partnership, such as revenue sharing requirements, and DDOT will not evaluate applications based on those internal agreements. The second letter of support has to be from PEPCO, where the applicant must provide support from PEPCO that acknowledges that the utility connection is feasible at the proposed site, and the charging station can be operational within 1 year of that grant agreement. And if the applicant is not the property owner, the applicant has to coordinate with the property owner to obtain this letter of support. And at our last public meeting, PEPCO did a presentation on how to obtain this letter. And so that presentation and slide deck can be found on our program website on the Get Involved page. So that does extensive stakeholder engagement, especially coordinating with the Department of Energy and Environment, DOE, on EV specific outreach. For example, reaching out to potential site hosts and informing them of this grant opportunity. Recently, DOE organized a site visit to the Benning Road broken charger that will be replaced a NEVI compliant station using the Electric Vehicle Charging Reliability and Accessibility Accelerator Grant. And we have future engagement planned to determine the public experience of the initial NEVI chargers that are going to be installed in this first funding round. Yeah, now I'll be talking about the program timeline. The RFA will be published tomorrow, and May 24th by 5 p.m. will be the application deadline. And applications need to be submitted to the NEVI email, which is nevi@dc.gov. And this summer we'll evaluate applications, and by fall we'll begin awarding initial grants. And then we're expecting the first NEVI chargers to open by 2025. So that's it, the end of my presentation, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Uh, Not sure. Great. Oh, actually, it's, uh, yeah, Tracy, I see you have your hand raised. Could you unmute yourself? And yeah, I can't hear Tracy. Pedro, do you want to ask your question? I see you're next. And you can unmute yourselves and answer. Ask your questions, I mean. Mm.
Hey, so they're not allowed, they can't unmute themselves. So one of us will have to request to unmute. I can do that for you. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I requested unmute, but it's not going through for me. So if you could. Okay, so the first question I'm seeing is, are there any CBE requirements in the grant? So no, the NEVI funding cannot be used to give preference to DBEs or CBEs. Will there be only 5 sites awarded funding based on the slide presented? So we have $16.7 million over 5 years, and this initial funding round has $3.5 million. Some of that funding will be used by DDOT for planning, outreach, and administration as allowed by NEVI guidelines, and the remaining funds will be awarded. Where based on price proposals we receive, that will determine what each awardee is and how many proposed sites there will be. If the location we are interested in has a building that is existing, can we modify that building with NEVI funds to convert to a cafe bathroom? So no, so these amenities that I mentioned have to be already existing and cannot be any proposed or concept plans for future amenities. And NEVI funds cannot be used to develop any sort of amenities. It's specifically for the NEVI charging stations.
Okay, you said that the funds can only be used for NEVI equipment and operations, so not for, I just wanted to clarify, I see your specific question is, can the NEVI funds be used for these amenities? And just want to reiterate that they are to be used exclusively for the charging facilities and maintenance and operations during the course of the grant.
Are there any bond requirements, bid performance as part of the application? I will follow up on that. Yeah.
And any details of that will be in the request for applications that is published tomorrow. I'm sorry I'm not able to answer that specific question today, but if you sit tight for one more day, you'll get the answer.
You mentioned on the PEPCO slide that stations need to be operational within 1 year. The timeline for many DCFC stations can often be 18 months or more. New York Power Authority sees an average of 16 months. Can you explain the 1 year requirement further? Yes, so the proposed stations need to be operational within 1 year of the grant agreement, and that's specified in the RFA. We are also requiring that within 90 days of the grant agreement, applicants begin the permit process and everything to expedite that to meet the 1 year requirement. Can EVITPs, certified professionals on a team, please clarify whether there are requirements for to be electrical so yeah, as part of the NEVI federal guidelines, there needs to be EVITP certification for the electrical contractors. And there's more specific information to that in the NEVI final rulemaking and the NEVI federal guidance, and that will be referenced in the RFA that comes out tomorrow. If I have a site that is outside of the suggested area, can we still apply? No, so the proposed site needs to be within that one mile requirement within the AFCs, so the purple region. And we still recommend, like, if your location is on that border of that location, to reach out to DDOT to confirm eligibility. And then possibly in future funding rounds, more locations can open up. But not for this funding round, sorry. Are there any additional site charge or reporting specifications DC will be requiring that go above and beyond the federal NEVI minimum standards? Yes, so that will be specified in the RFA as well, and beyond the NEVI minimum standard, that will have its own reporting requirements on a monthly basis for invoicing and reimbursements. Could we get a copy of these slides? Yes, so the recording and slides will be posted in a couple of days on our NEVI program website. Is DDOT's preference to have networked versus non-networked EV charging stations installed? I'm not sure what this question means. Quentin, do you want to clarify? If you want to come off of mute. Okay, I'll go to the next one, come back. Help with permitting to meet this 1-year requirement. So yeah, applicants will need to begin the permitting process, Department of Buildings and PEPCO, to get their ducks in a row. But the onus will be on the applicants to work with PEPCO and coordinate with them, get all the permits and ensure the location is make EV ready.
I'd like to add on to that we have been working with PEPCO. We understand that in some jurisdictions that, getting that utility coordination is one of the critical paths for this, for success, for actually getting these projects through. So we intend to work with PEPCO and with the grant recipient to help make sure that we want these projects to be complete in a timely manner as well. It's not entirely on the grant recipient, but we expect, we expect you all to be working to push those permits through as well. So we will be working with the DOE and PEPCO just on a regular basis to make sure our package of NEVI projects are going to get permitted through. But that's kind of why that utility letter of support is really important, so that we know that there aren't massive site retrofits that need to happen prior to the project start. So it can happen within the.
When is the EVI required? Upon completion of the application or before the contract is signed with the district? Before the contract is signed. So the EVITP certification, I believe, takes a few hours to complete online. But yeah, that will be required before signing the contract. And there's more specifics to that in the federal guidance on where to learn more about the qualifications, certifications required for EVITP. Based on other states' process, applicants have struggled to have the utility complete letters of support. Will DDOT allow email correspondence with the utility showing due diligence as proof of utility engagement if the utility does not respond to requests for utility capacity to serve? So in the application package, we do need like a signed letter of support from PEPCO acknowledging that the site has the utility feasibility for a DC fast charger.
And they've put together a PEPCO in the slides that when they presented at the last meeting, they put together, it's almost like a permit. It's a process that you go through the PEPCO website to get this letter of support. So they're ready to respond to these So they should, that it will be probably your critical path, is make sure you reach out to them. You know, that's the first step. And I believe it's already set up, so you could start that process already.
Is there an address confirmation tool to confirm address compliance? So yeah, we have the site mapping tool that shows that purple polygon shape for the eligible locations. I would also say go to Google Maps and look at the beginning of the exit ramp or the intersection center point, if depending on if it's a highway or an interstate, and just determine the driving distance to the entrance of the parking facility and ensure that that is one travel mile. And then also email me to confirm that site eligibility as well. And one electrical contractor engage an EVITP to participate on a NEVI project. So I believe the federal requirement is at least one electrical contractor needs to be EVITP certified. And network charging stations are connected remotely to a larger network on part of an infrastructure system of connected chargers. Non-network charging stations are standalone units that are not part of an FC network, are not accessible remotely. I think your earlier question was if charging stations are required to be networked or not non-networked. So these are individual charging stations, and is this reference to like payment methods for customers, or Quentin, are you still able to get off of mute? Our preliminary site design suffice at time of submission for the site plan. NEVI final rule survey engineering are eligible costs and will be completed post award. Yeah, so part of our RFA will have provide like a construction site map of the location and showing equipment specifications. And yeah, preliminary site design is fine. But it does need to show the exact location of the site and where the exact location is of the proposed charging station at that proposed parking lot. And more specifics on what else needs to be shown on that site, construction site map is in the RFA that will be out tomorrow. Is the link to the Pepco utility site host capacity process included within the application? Yeah, so there is information in the RFA that will come out that reiterates Pepco's presentation and slides from last time, showing the process to get that utility letter of support. Is there a schedule for funds reimbursement for the grant awardees or funds reimbursed upon full completion? So the fund reimbursement process is in the RFA that will be released tomorrow, and DDOT is requiring monthly progress reports with invoicing information to receive for funds reimbursement. Yes, and then an upfront cost of 30% of the funding request will be provided upfront, and that would need to be acknowledged in the monthly progress reports on how that funds was used, and an explanation and justification for the use of that 30% upfront cost. How many sites do you expect to fund in the first round? So again, for this first funding round, we have 3.5 million out of the 16.7, and some of that funding will be used by DDOT for planning and outreach and administration as provided by the NEVI guidelines, and the remaining funds will be awarded based on the price proposal submitted in the application. Quentin said someone has to unmute him. Danica, could you unmute Quentin Washington?
Finally, success.
Mhm.
Yeah, my question was, because they have various types of, well, two types of charging stations. They're either networked into an overall infrastructure system, which allows you to have remote access to online management tools and things like that. When it's not networked, there's no remote accessibility to that charging station for things like that, uh, uh, basically, for I guess access to various different information about the charging station itself. So I noticed that when I looked at the package that was sent out, there were non-networked and networked charging stations that were listed on one of the pages that talked about charging stations that may be upgraded using NEVI formula program funding. So I was just trying to figure out what the preference of DDOT was, whether that they wanted the charging stations that were installed to be networked or non-networked. I mean, as far as the cost for wiring and all that kind of stuff is pretty much the same regardless, but when they're not networked, I guess it doesn't provide any remote access to the individuals trying to obtain a charge.
I would say I don't think we have a preference as long as the data reporting requirements are met according to the NEVI guidelines and the rulemaking. But I'll look more into this to verify.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. What time tomorrow will the RFA be posted? So the RFA will be posted on the NEVI program website by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Are applicants required to be registered and in good standing with DLCP at time of application or prior to award? At so by the time you submit the award on May 24th, 2020, May 24th by 5 p.m. to DDOT, you need to provide proof that you're in good standing and registered with DLCP. Can improvements be made on site with non-NEVI funds both during and after the NEVI funds are used to install the charging infrastructure? Can these improvements be given any credit in the DDOT review process, even if they are completed after the 12-month contract period? Likewise, can these other improvements be designated as applicant cost sharing, even if they occur outside of the 12-month period? So NEVI funds are reimbursed for installation and operation and maintenance for 5 years from the date of operation. That's what you meant for improvements. So if there's like any kind of repair issue to the equipment or electrical connection within the operation and maintenance period of the 5 years, that's when NEVI funds can be used. Are there any other questions? And the NEVI funds be used for site improvements or driver safety? Depends on, so the NEVI funds can only be used for the installation of the equipment like the equipment itself of the charger and the operation and maintenance of it, but not site improvements, unless it's related specifically to the charger, like signage or anything like that. If that's what you mean, like a EV parking sign or something. I suppose I mean, can the amenities be put in after the 12 months period? So the way we're evaluating amenities in our scoring, they need to be existing amenities at the time of the application is being evaluated, or yeah. What is the maximum funding for any given applicant? We do not have a cap on funding per applicant. And making a decision regarding wanting network versus non-networked charging, please keep in mind that non-networked are usually. What is your goal for NEVI sites for the first round? So for this first round of funding, we do only have 3.5 out of the 16.7 million. So this will be our initial round where we will see what the process for the RFA is and solicit feedback from the public on the user experience of these NEVI chargers and see how we can implement improvements in the next funding rounds and see what's worked best and continue to do that.
And I'm going to drop some requirements in the chat. Thank you to Lauren for finding the exact reference in the federal Code of Federal Regulations. So I'm going to drop a link to the specific requirements for charging network connectivity. That's what we were talking about earlier, I believe, Quentin. So just want to draw your attention.
So your goal is at least one or two. Oh, Cheryl, do you want to come off mute to clarify? Do you mean one or two charging stations? Do you expect to have 2 rounds for AFC corridors before moving into the non-corridor phase of NEVI? So the NEVI requirement is that the current AFCs need to be fully built out before any remaining funds can be used for other locations. So so it depends on how many rounds it will take for all 5 of the AFCs we have in the district to be fully built out, and that's determined by the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA. Can one applicant send in multiple applications? Yes, one applicant can send in multiple applications for multiple proposed sites. Each application is for one proposed site. Please upload the link for the EVITP requirement. I'll ask Meredith to find the link in the CFR. It's under qualifications and certification. Yeah. Will there be evaluation criteria for applications? Yes, so the RFA that will be coming out tomorrow will have the evaluation criteria and have the scoring criteria in the RFA.
And we'll continue to respond to questions if you have things, you know, after this meeting. We still have the NEVI email address. I'll drop that in the chat as a reminder. But this is not your last opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, I'm expecting more questions tomorrow when our RFA comes out. And the question period closes on May 3rd by 5 p.m. to the NEVI email. Oh, what time is RFA releasing? So again, the RFA will be out by 5 p.m. tomorrow in the District Grants Clearinghouse, and it will also be linked in our main NEVI program webpage. I'll give a couple more minutes for questions. And again, the recording and the slides will be posted to the NEVI webpage in a couple of days as well. Also, if everyone wants to fill out the partnership facilitation form right now and see if you're having any issues and questions right now, I can answer them as well. Well, if there's no more questions, I'll wrap up our meeting. And again, please feel free to email me anything regarding the RFA, the Partnership Facilitation Tool, or site eligibility. And May 3rd by 5 p.m. is the deadline. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you.